Well, here we
Here
are.
we are.
What's up, boss?
How long has it been? 6 years? No, 5.
5?
Were you there when I left? 2016. You stayed.
Oh, I was there. Yeah, I was there pretty long after you left, actually. Um, Fortunately or unfortunately, but I have a
Yeah.
story for you for the day we met and what led up to it, because it was kind of a big deal for me and a little bit of a confession, which you might laugh at. So I was working at the Opera House as a doorman there, and we had come up to a couple months where they didn't have a lot of shows. So the owner had tried to get me in with an event security company at the time, and didn't have any luck just because the person she was talking to was away on holiday. So I ended up just taking that and being like, oh, I'll apply at some event security places, right? So I did that. I sent out some resumes, and I broke a tooth, got a really bad tooth infection all in the same week. And the first company to call me back was Voldemort, just the company that we won't name.
Okay.
And I almost didn't go for the interview because I had this awful tooth infection, but I decided, like, I woke up that morning, I'm like, oh, fuck, just go. Something was telling me, just go. It was horrible. Like, I don't know if you know where their office is, but it's like way down by past the docks in Toronto. It was winter. It was gross. Like, I had to walk, a ridiculous amount of time just to get there in the snow. And it was tooth infection. It was an awful day. They ended up hiring me. And at their interview, they said, we just got this new contract we think you'd be great for. Come back in on this day and we'll send you in for training. So I go back in on that day, and I'm not going in for training. I'm going for an interview, apparently, with this company, MLSE. And so they take us to Rico. At the time, it was Rico. So on the way, I got a phone call from my friend Sebastian because I had just recorded, it's like basically heavy metal screaming on a commercial that he was working on. And that commercial ended up being sold for the Super Bowl. So I got this really big news, like my voice is going to be on a Super Bowl commercial, like on my way to come meet you. And so we arrived to meet you, and this is where the confession comes in, because we were a little bit early. And the man who brought us there, who has the same name as your husband, told us that we had a few minutes. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to run around back and have a smoke because I'm a smoker. He's like, okay, do it out of sight. I'm like, I planned to. So I ran around back, and I had a couple smokes. One of them was tobacco. And then I came in and I met you.
I don't remember where. So we were at Rico. I'm trying to remember, like, the room. I mean,
it was when the offices were still downstairs, and it was you and the building manager and the general manager.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're the type of person that can smoke and have an interview, like, all the power to you. Some people can do that, and whatever. I mean, I don't judge.
I'm one of those lucky
I thought
ones.
you were going to tell me that the man who is now also my husband gave you like some sort of rundown of me, because we tell the story of us meeting as like mommy and daddy hated each other for 2 years.
No, I came into that, right? Like you were in a previous relationship when I first met you.
Okay.
Right. And so I was there through all of that transition out of the old, actually the same name, right? So
good memory.
But yeah, that was those fun times. But like we had a lot of fun times. And when I've had a lot of good jobs with shitty bosses. I've had a lot of shitty jobs with good bosses, but have a good job with a good boss was something that stood out for me. And obviously we got a lot to talk through, but before we go further, I want to thank you, because you always had my back. You always fought for me. And to be honest, I wouldn't have ended up in the position I was at in that place if it was not for you. So thank you.
Aw, thanks. I mean, I recognized the leader in you, as I'm sure the company that brought you after no training and just presented you, someone there must have seen that leadership ability right away in the first day that they met you too. So, and I mean, it's funny, like what we know now, if we had only known then. Like I was thinking about the dynamics of our work environment and some of the things that happened. I mean, and the challenges that came up. If I would have known the term gaslighting now, how much that, or then, how much that could have changed, like different events that happened. And anyway, Yeah, here we are.
Yeah. So you came from Vancouver basically doing the same job, right? So you must have grown up over there, or did you grow up here?
No, I grew up here and then I ran away when I was 17 to Whistler to be a ski bum. I hadn't even finished high school yet. How my parents let me go, I don't know. And I said that I was just going to go for a year, take a year off. Famous last words. I came back 12 years later. But in the meantime, I had found out that, being a ski bum wasn't going to get me anywhere. So I went and graduated high school and went to university and college and did all that out there. But sometimes I forget that I even live there because my life here is so nice. Anyway, yeah.
Fair enough. And what were you doing there? What did you before you ended up here?
So I was I studied recreational management because it sounded cool. And then because I was like, recreational management, I like recreation. And then I went and I ended up ultimately getting my business degree, but I had a really cool boss out there as well. And a guy who saw me one day. I got a summer job at the Peony. So the Peony is like the CNE, but it's the Pacific National Exhibition. And it was a summer job, like working in the gaming department. So I oversaw like the Peony prize home lottery and a lot of the casino games that took place on the Midway. Anyways, the vice president there saw me one day underneath one of the prize cars. There's like an actual vehicle that gets given away, and the like rotating things that it sits on, the display was broken. And I was like, I don't know, does anyone have like a wrench? And I climbed under the thing to see if I could fix it. And he was like, there's someone with chutzpah or whatever, and hired me. And like, I knew nothing about anything. And he made me his coordinator, and he taught me so much about like venue management. He made me a duty manager during the Olympics when I was like 25, 26, like really young, but gave me a lot of leash and a lot of coaching. And so I got a lot of experience there. I ended up being on the project management team to build Empire Field, which was a 27,000 seat stadium that we built in 3 months so that the BC Lions could play there while they renovated BC Place. So like just incredible opportunity. And and it's so funny, like coming home MLSE, that was like a dream job, being given the opportunity to come back. And it was, I mean, it was such a great opportunity. Everything happens for a reason though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it by the time you left BC, you were kind of doing a similar job to what you ended up doing when you came here?
It was similar in that when I came here, it wasn't job to job. The job that I was just telling you about, sort of the venue management, in between that, I went and worked for the Whitecaps. So that was an incredible opportunity as well. I got to know the management team at the Whitecaps because they also played at the aforementioned Empire Field. And they had a job opening when they were launching from what was the NASL, the North American Soccer League, into MLS. So what a cool opportunity to go and be a part of that team, because they needed somebody with venue experience. They were moving into BC Place. It was just a great opportunity to be a part of that team. So that was kind of like a 1-year thing. The CEO was so disappointed when I said, "Oh, I'm going to work for MLSE and TFC." She's like, "You're not going to be happy. You'll be back." And it was so great. It was the only opportunity I ever had in my career to work for a woman. And man, she's incredible. But ultimately the opportunity to come back to Toronto, where I was born and raised, be close to my family, be close to my, nieces. My sister was pregnant at the time. So it was a no-brainer.
Makes sense. Yeah. It's got to be hard being that far away from family all the time. It's I've never had to experience it, thankfully, but I think about it sometimes. My kids are starting to get older, and I think about like I kind of, there's parts of me that want to get out of Toronto, want to get out of Ontario, kind of want to get out of Canada, but even still, I'm like putting that distance between me and my kids. Even like thinking about me and my brothers, I'm like, wow, that's not an easy choice to make. So when you came over, you ended up with the job that I met you in, with the event manager at,
Yes. Yeah.
Those events are crazy. Like it's, a little bit before I got that job, I did work some other bigger events, like some big concerts at, say, Dundas Square and things like that, North by Northeast Festival, I guess they call it.
Oh yeah.
So I had some exposure to that big events, but not nearly what I was about to have coming in there. And I know what it was like, especially by the time I was at BMO all the time and in the control booth all the time. Like,
Oh, yeah.
in a way, I have 40,000 people kind of dependent on my ability to hear and see and operate and act, So I can only imagine having my scope of like seeing the events actually run. I used to always kind of wonder like what it's like from the top down, which is what you would do, right? You'd have to, long before the event even happened, be able to see all these different moving parts and how they put together. So I'm wondering if like you could kind of tell me how you would approach something like that, such a big event.
I mean, thank you. That's so many things are coming to mind. Like even just quickly, like when you talked about before, having 40,000 lives in your hands, like you and I worked on some really cool initiatives there to improve processes. And I never saw it as top down. Like I always kind of saw us as partners. So I'll just say that like you and I did some cool stuff there in terms of fixing the operations or changing the operations.
And
it
they
would be so
stuck,
cool.
by the way. They still use those
Awesome.
today. Yeah. Like I still talk to
Yay.
the boys down there. They still do what we came up with, really.
That's so great. That's so great. It's funny, like I don't know where this brain came from, if that makes sense. Like I used to lay in bed when I was a kid and think about that I was going to bring farm animals into my backyard. We had like a pretty decent sized yard when I was a kid. And I was going to bring farm animals and I was going to hire clowns. Like this is like 5, 6 years old. I was thinking about creating events in my backyard, charging admission, and like how that's what I was going to do. It was very strange. So like, obviously this like overview of how to bring things together is somewhat ingrained inside of me. I mean, I learned there were people from MLSE that I learned a lot from as well. Like the financial, bookkeeper, her name, accountant, or like, she taught me so much. I ran into her and she taught me about how when you're putting together, these big events, how to look at the minutia of the numbers. And I think that is a big part of what I do today too. When you're thinking about, okay, I was taught to think about fan experience and to think about the team experience. So the experience of the team, the fans. When I mean team, I mean like athletes on the ice, the field, concert perspective, thinking about the artist. But now I'm also working at the beer fest too. So we have this food and beverage element that's also running. And so I've always got that like financial overview as well as all of the other elements. And I don't know, just bringing it together is what I do. I guess it's just 15, 20 years of experience that's made it so easy now. Anyway, I try to get away from it, but I can't.
It just follows you around.
Yeah.
What was your favorite of the grandfathered events, like the ones that we had to do every year?
Well, I think I have to say the Royal because I'm still with them. I still do a lot of work with them. I go and I work the Royal every single year. It is a cool event, the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair. But obviously the boat show had its super cool element of building a lake. I mean, sometimes I don't even think about the cool things that we did. So thanks for the opportunity to sort of rehash that. And then there was a third. Oh, the CNE. I mean, obviously I still talk to them quite a bit as well, because we share the grounds for the festival. So I probably couldn't pick one, but yeah, they were all such an honor to work with for sure. And there's more. There's the home show that's still there, right? And man, with COVID and everything that's gone on too, seeing these people and talking to these contacts that I've made over the years and how they've grown and shifted and changed and pivoted, my least favorite word of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. Just in case it comes up and we go into it in terms of conversation, for censorship on this show, I call it the joy. You can catch joy, you can spread joy. Some people take a lollipop for their joy, and some people remain sugar-free.
Yeah, yeah.
So, just in case it does come up, I thought, and it's fun to say.
Okay.
But yeah, I loved the Royal Winter Fair was wild. Like I was always really kind of mixed on it personally, because like I grew up on farms and around farms, and the treatment of the animals in order to pull off a show like that is something else. And the one that always stands up for me, I can't remember what they called it. It was before the Peacock Walk, but even the Peacock Walk is kind of gross. But with the Clydesdales, when they bring out all those carriages, like I remember standing up on like one of the upper decks, just watching that go down, and I'm listening to them talk about all of the money that goes into all of this. And like, if I was kind of just doing the math in my head, and I'm like, each one of those is like a multi-million-dollar thing. And then really the only reason that they exist is so that people can stand here and look at them because they're pretty. Isn't that ridiculous? And then even like the peacock walk, which is just like with their fancy gowns walking around. Obviously, we're recreating tradition, right? Like that's a lot of what the winter fair has tried to do. But I always just thought that was really crazy. I'm like, you guys could be feeding Africa or something with that money.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you talk about the size of the Clydesdales and standing in that spot, I stood in that exact same spot as the NBA All-Star players came in and probably did the same thing, like, whoa, they're huge. Like it's the exact same. And so like to talk philosophically about like the money associated with things that entertain us, you could say the same thing about humans in sports.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, humans in sports. And obviously like that's a big part of what we did. And I would see the stories that I have from the stuff that I saw through that. I was actually wanted to bring up the All-Star game because that was a big one. And you were in charge of that. And I remember like I was working with you that week and just your head was ready to explode for multiple reasons. But that was a big one. And I'm never going to forget the day that I'm just standing there kind of making sure everything's okay. And next thing I know, I see a fist and it's LeBron James. And I'm like, oh, hey, buddy, what's up?
Nice.
And I think that was the day that they gave Drake the key to the city. I think that was the day. If it's not, on the day that they gave Drake to the city, I'm coming out through the back of the Marley's dressing room into like Marley's alley. And one of the doors is open, the other one's closed. And Drake's mom's standing there. And there's a little gap for me to get through. So I'm like, I'm in my suit. I turn like this sideways and I go out to go like this. And Drake's leaning in to kiss his mom from this side of the door. So I'm sticking my face out and I get a kiss from Drake. Right on
hilarious.
And he starts cracking up and he's like, brother, if you wanted a kiss, you could have just asked.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But I got to know him quite well, actually, once they built, I don't know what they're calling it now, but it used to be BioSteel when they built BioSteel for the Raptors. He was there all the time, especially when they were first building it, when they first opened it, he was there all the time. And by that time you were gone, but that fell under our control as well. Like we looked after the facility security for that. So I got to be there through the building of it. And,
nice.
Building that one up right from scratch to nothing with the same, kind of structure that we had put in place. So that was a lot of fun. You probably would have enjoyed that because I know you like the Raptors. But yeah. It was that facility is beautiful and wild. Like it was just I got to walk through it before it was ever even opened, and I was just walking around being like, this place is about to be history. You just had that feeling, you know what I mean? And then they went on to win, a year or two later, right? So
that's great.
Pretty awesome experiences. I had a point in something I was going to say that I lost.
That's okay.
But WWE events from your place, what were those like? Because from our place, they were a little bit crazy because WWE had their own security, they had all their own rules, and they had some sketchy fucking practices. So I was just wondering like what they were like to deal with from an event management side.
Super pro. Pro. You don't get to be that size and tour the world and so flawlessly without just being super pro. It actually was quite easy. The hardest part was ensuring that the fan experience was good and that, their security was happy. Like they had high standards. So you've got like fans that are trying to get as close as they can to the talent and, potential for crowding with VIP and autograph signings and this and that. There was always a lot of moving pieces because that's, again, when you're like touring something that big, how do you make more? Will you sell VIP experiences and packages and you've got like 7 of them. So how do you execute them all in different places in the building? And there's just always a lot of moving pieces, but it was a good event to have like a more junior event coordinator work on because they're then starting to get that ingrained process built into their brain. Okay, this is happening. Who do I need to tell to make sure that it's successful? Okay, that's happening. How do I make sure that I keep those fans safe or those guests safe? And then working on the grounds, which I learned a lot about in BC, was there's also all these other events happening on the grounds, right? So you've got WWE happening, but you also have the home show, and they have 10,000 people that are coming through today. And so and then they've got school buses, and there's just, anyway, WWE is great.
TTC games in the middle of the CNE. Now that's how.
TFC games in the middle of the CNE. Oh yeah. And then throw a beer festival. Like I always joke with my boss, who's the owner of the beer festival. We used to hate when we have to share the grounds. I would look out my office window and it would be like these zombies coming from the beer festival headed towards a TFC game. And it was like, no, and they had tickets, right? They'd been drinking at the festival all day, and then they had tickets to come to the evening TFC game. Remember all the cups?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this day where I get a radio call from Jodie here, and it sounds pretty serious. So I run up to her office, and I open the door and I go in, and she's like, "Check out my new bike." And this is like, I didn't know about you until then that that was a big deal for you. You're a serious bike enthusiast. So and now I know also, I don't know if you used to do this back then, but you've been doing marathons, triathlons, I believe. So where does that come from, lady? That's some intense shit.
Okay, you don't know the story? It's so related. Dallas Eakins, former coach of the Toronto Marlies, he put out a challenge. Yeah, he put out a challenge to the staff via way of email. I was pretty new. And he basically said, who wants to join us in participating as a group in the Toronto Triathlon Festival? So MLSE gave us MLSE uniforms, and like tri outfits. And I had a little redemption that I needed, because I did a triathlon when I was, let's say 12. And I didn't train because I'd done a bunch previous to that, and I'd like won them. So I didn't train, whatever. And then this was like a big one in Thunder Bay, and I didn't finish. I like passed out because I didn't train. So like I didn't finish, and it was a disaster. So I had some like this like triathlon redemption. Anyways, when I crossed that finish line, I was hooked. And, it's really been cool to watch the process over the years. And that was 2012. I raced, one or two a year for fun up until I left my corporate career in 2016. And then I got like really serious because I had all this time on my hands, and I got into the fitness industry. And then I was like, whoa, it was like a whole other level of seriousness. So now I'm dialing it back. Now that I'm a mom, I'm dialing it back a little bit, because it's more fun when it's fun. And I don't know if you know, but I in 2019 went to the World Championships of triathlon, and so I represented Canada, and I got so serious about it. I was like, let's see how far this can go. And, I'm going to dial it back a little bit now just to kind of have fun again at it. But yeah, getting a new bike is an exciting thing.
What is the training for something like that? Like what do you do leading up to it?
Well, that's just it. Like, before Max was born, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to the World Championships this year in Abu Dhabi, or next year. So 2022. But they were supposed to be in Edmonton, but due to the pandemic, we didn't have a World Championships. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back to World Championships. I had a spot for 2020. And, but it's like 2 to 3 hours a day of training. And like, as a new mom, that's not really a thing. So, maybe it is if you're independently wealthy and can have a nanny all day, but, So, what does the training look like? Pre-pandemic, pre-baby, I would train in the morning. So I'd probably go swimming or run. And then I would do some strength work at some point. And then I would do another evening thing. So it's swim, bike, run, strength training. Resting is important, like actually resting, mobility work. So like yoga, like it's a lot, but hey.
What do you do for your diet? What kind of diet do you, especially while training?
I love to eat, and I love to promote eating, because I hate the diet industry. And I think that, a lot of so I went on to coach athletes as well. And a lot of issues that people would run into is they weren't eating enough, because triathletes in general on Instagram are super skinny. very, very thin. And people think that they need to restrict their calories in order to get their bodies to look like that. But it's such a misnomer, because in fact, you need to eat a ton to fuel your body so that it can help, that it can happily and healthily perform for you. So like, yeah, I'm not eating French fries because that is not going to help me perform, but I am eating like granola with nuts and, you know, coconut, berries, like a ton of it, because restricting your caloric intake is not going to actually help you lose weight when you're training 2 to 3 hours a day. Your body goes into stress mode and you're starving it. Anyway, I eat a lot, and I eat pizza, and I drink beer.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
What goes on in the mind? Because obviously, like, you can train the body to a point, but like, I know what doing things to endurance is like. There's a point where the body doesn't matter anymore. It's all happening in here. So what, like, if you can kind of describe what's going on in your mind, or if you have certain practices or tricks that you do to distract yourself from the pain you're inflicting on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mental is all of it, right? So when I qualified so you have to qualify a year ahead of the event. So in 2018, when I qualified at the Toronto Triathlon Festival, I got into what they would call like the flow state. I don't know how I did it. I wish I could recreate it, but that's what happened. And it's just like this, there are no thoughts happening. You're in the zone. And I've studied flow state. Nobody knows how to get into it, but once you're in it, it's just, you're good. I can't recreate it though. And it was ultimately my mind that was my demise when I went to the World Championships. It was in Switzerland. I had flown around the world to go and represent my country. And within 200 meters of the swim, I'd forgotten like one element of my pre-race routine, which was to take like an energy gel. And I, within 200 meters, was like berating myself, like, you're an idiot. You ruined it. You messed up. You're letting your country down. Like, just that. And that was it. That was it. I came in like 68th, you know, out of 72, but I wasn't the last Canadian. There was a Canadian behind me. So, but yeah, like, it was not a good day for me. And ultimately I kept saying, Jodie, enjoy this experience. You're in, where was I? Lausanne, which is just outside Geneva. Lake Geneva is where we raced. And, I kept saying, you know, enjoy this. You are so lucky to be able to do this. Look around. But then, so it's like, there's like two little voices, right? There's like that one. And then there's the, like, you're a loser, you're fat, you're too slow, you didn't train enough. None of this was true. But it's the make or break. Ultimately, you can do all the training you want in the world, and if your head is not on, you're done.
Yeah. Well, you know, coming from your background like that, that does require a similar type of mental stamina, because like we were saying before, so many moving parts and so much depending on you, right? Like, for people who don't know, if at one of these events I would hear this woman's name 4,000 times, right? So I could only imagine what it's like having to hear your own name 4,000 times. But I could imagine that it really did, you know, strengthen that part of you that's really good at compartmentalizing your thoughts and focusing on the task at hand.
It's interesting, you know, when I think about that work, you know, when my radio is going off and I'm in the large event mode, maybe that is just going into the flow state of work and feeling confident. I rarely had, there were moments in my career where there were like attacks on my character, but it was rare that I allowed attacks on my ability to get in, like, through the, I think that was probably due to like being raised by parents who were like, you got this. Like, my parents always had my back, but for whatever reason, when it came to athletics and sport, they also, but for me personally, I have this like pattern of the mental game being affected and getting in my way. So I'm not sure why in work mode, I can go into work mode and nobody penetrates the, you know, the good vibes, but anyway.
Yeah, well, one thing I I've always tried to do whenever I'm leading a team, and something I always saw you as being really good at. I was reminded of a few days before I asked you to do this podcast, because I was cleaning through some stuff and I found this, what were they? I think it was that program that they have for staff through MLSC who've done a good job, and you could remember at each game, you could kind of nominate a staff person. Well, you handed me one of those one day, and on it, it said, "Thank you for never letting good enough be good enough."
Aw.
From Jodie. And I was like, she gets me. she gets me.
It's mutual though.
Yeah, for sure. And like I'd always like, I would always talk to my team about that type of thing that you would do, because I would see you do it for your entire team. You would always, but on the other hand, and I'm very much the same way, like when people are fucking up and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you didn't hesitate to let them know. And some people can't handle that. And that's where, the aforementioned attacks on your character would start to come in. It was because you're telling people, you're in the position where you have to tell people things that they don't want to hear. Right. And you were good at that as well. I mean, opinions aside, my opinion, when I was there too, I thought you handled all that really well, and empathize for your position and it all. And kudos.
Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, it's funny, like now I have words for those experiences. Like I started working closely in mental health after leaving MLSC. And like I said, if somebody doesn't like what you're telling them and they flip it around to make it, you are a bad person, and they do that over and over and over, and you start to question your own character. Now I know that's gaslighting. I understand now that what I didn't do was set boundaries, right? These are words that I didn't have. Boundaries. It's okay. I'm just setting a boundary for you. I'm telling you what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And, I'm sure I didn't get it right every single time, but I try to help everybody, family, friends, understand that now. And that's just communication in human behavior, and it's okay. But we're raised and ingrained to think that if we're a woman who has too many opinions, there's something wrong with us. I don't need to tell you, you understand. And you provided a lot of really informative content. I don't know how much I told you this, by way of your social media, for me to help a family member who was going through a really tough breakup. And so you shared a lot of content. I hope it's okay to share. I mean, you share your social media publicly, but on narcissism and dealing with narcissists. And that was very helpful for me to share. I think it's just all about, sharing information with people, because if they don't know, Well,
yeah, especially on that topic, because it's kind of relatively new in human behavior, I think. And it's spreading very, very fast. And I think a lot of people are affected by it and have been affected by it without really knowing what it is. Went through a similar situation with a family member who one of their stepchildren was showing these signs, and they didn't understand what these signs were. She was a young adult, and once again, we were having a conversation about narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy, and he kind of stopped in the middle of it, went, "Wait a second, they do what?" And I'm like, and I think the topic actually at the time was gaslighting. And so I explained, this is what gaslighting is, and this is how people will use it against you. And he's like, "Whoa, that's exactly what she does," right? And just having the terminology even to understand the behaviors is very empowering for a person who's going through it. They can start to recognize it. They can start to implement boundaries. They can really start to see that person through a different lens and not let it hurt them so much. So it is an important topic. I try to speak about it in a lot of different veins. I'm writing a book that's kind of all about it right now. It's like a fictional horror type story, but within it is, all this research and education I've had about narcissists and psychopaths and sociopaths, because psychology has been, massive part of my whole life. It's part of what I do. It's one of my jobs always. So, trying to spread awareness on, and I'll be frank, I think it's like a new evolution of human. I think that it's almost like a offshoot. I called it a subset of human beings that have this part of their brain that just operates differently. And they can't seem to generate good feelings, and they can't seem to generate good relationships without taking it from someone else. And it's a very parasitic thing. And education is power, right? The more people know, the more they can identify it when it comes across in their life. It could come through a boss, it could come through a significant other, it could come through, anybody that you're dealing with in any kind of situation. And to be aware of it and know how to deal with it is empowering. So I'm glad it helped.
Yeah, no, big time. And that's exactly it. Like I feel like that's been a big pathway to sort of like my own personal freedom and liberation, is kind of like understanding the human brain. I don't know if I told you, I started my master's in psychology in September. So we can definitely talk more about this, because I'm doing so much research as a part of my studies that, like, if there's a topic that you're like, I'd love to, get some data, because I'm doing like a ton of data mining, and just, so yeah, we can definitely take that one offline.
Well, yeah, I'll definitely use that as a resource. So what are they saying these days about, about this?
Yeah.
We actually just had, like, I work with people sometimes who have DID, or dissociative identity disorder. And because there's such a massive transition in that, a lot of people don't know, like, it's what multiple personality disorder is. But because there's like a spectrum to it, like there is for a lot of psychological disorders, they changed the name, they changed the definition to incorporate a larger spectrum of people, because a lot of the treatment is kind of the same. But in the process of doing that and creating this spectrum, there's all kinds of new sources of data coming in, which are making people in the field kind of look at the whole again, with all these new data sets coming in, and rethinking our approach to how we handle those situations. So in a way, I kind of have two feelings on this. When they start expanding the spectrum for these different diagnoses and disorders, I'm kind of like, oh shit, like a whole bunch of people are going to be called bipolar who aren't bipolar. But on the other hand, it also opens the door for people who are working, because it's a very specialized field. All medicine kind of is, and people don't think about that either, that a virologist focuses on viruses, and different aspects of psychology. They focus on kind of one aspect and take in stuff from the others, but like everyone has a specialization. So now that spectrum is opening the door to more information to get into each specialization, I think that psychology is kind of on the verge of a growing period. And then add into it, them starting to add things like psychedelic treatments and exploring plant medicine and whatnot to add into it, ayahuasca retreats. They're finally starting to look at like meditation and mindfulness and yoga as being science, right? And bringing it into the fold, and slowly starting to implement physical health along with mental health, right? Like those two fields are starting to come together. And I guess
I'd like to say that I am, helping to lead the way.
Yes, you are. And that's why, like, you started that after you left MLSE, and like, we've stayed in touch. And when I saw you doing that, I was like, fuck yes, lady. That's awesome.
No, thank you. I mean, but I did it before I knew shit about shit, like I was like, wait a second, I'll do some research. I did a few Google searches and I'm like, yeah. But now I'm participating in discussions that there are actually researchers out there, because when I started Fitness for Mental Health, the biggest study that I found was one done on rats in 1983, where it was like, these rats measured higher levels of serotonin than these rats after, running on a wheel. And so like mental health has been advanced so much in its correlation, like physical activity and mental well-being. And you're right. Like we are making so many changes, like the diagnostics and statistics manual is forever changing. I just learned that like in the previous version, homosexuality was still listed as a disorder, so like we have to question these books sometimes. And to your point about, all these people are going to be labeled disorder, like bipolar, given the, I often talk about like, why don't we just remove the labels? We talk about how to help people feel better. And like, what do you need to do to feel better? It's not that cut and dry. But oftentimes for me, having a label and being given a diagnosis, I was given the diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder like 2 months before leaving MLSE. And it really was like the start of my, again, like understanding what I was going through, because it allowed me to research and go, oh yeah, I'm definitely feeling that way. Oh no, I don't feel that way. And sort of then, okay, what makes you feel better when you feel this way, and stuff like that. So for some people, a diagnosis is helpful, but not for everyone.
I think the over saturation of labels is a big problem in a lot of different things right now. Like even what you mentioned, like the distinction of homosexuality as a disorder. I have trans children, and I found out that the reason why they left it that way was so that, or sorry, the reason why the change hasn't happened for trans people is so that people can get medical services, get paid for, because it's for your health, right? As opposed to it being, what just homosexual people were fighting for to get that distinction removed was so that's a choice, right? And it's just kind of funny how, aspects of psychology are affected the same way a lot of different structures in our world are affected by, politics and by social movements and things like that. And the way that has benefited, I think, mental health over the last few years is a lot of awareness. Social media has really helped people break the stigma, to use the
Totally.
the slogan, and actually get out and talk to people about the problems that they're having, thereby, getting some understanding of what their diagnosis even is. Because a lot of people go to their doctor like, oh yeah, you've got bipolar disorder, here's some pills, go home, right? And like,
that's changing, hopefully.
Exactly. And then they're now educating the person on it. This is what bipolar disorder is. This is how it's going to affect you. And that wasn't the way that it was for a lot of like our parents and
even
us, right? Yeah. So it's a really beautiful thing to see that change coming.
Yeah, I agree. And I figured, why not just get the education behind me so that I can, be a little bit more, what's the word, creds, when I'm pounding on the table and trying to demand change. But yeah.
I want one of your pools. So what are those things? Okay. I'm kind of only partially understanding what it is.
Like, talk about right place, right time. So I got this job after I left MLSE coaching at like a small boutique gym. And one of the members is a vice president of marketing at Hydropool. Hydropool manufactures hot tubs and swim spas. And he was like, I need an ambassador. I need someone to help me with fitness and aquatic. So he like paid for me to become like an aquatic fitness instructor, like to get the designation so that I could build aquatic fitness programs for him. And then I was like, well, why don't you sponsor me as a triathlete? I'm like trying to, go to world championships. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah. So the relationship starts to build, like just from meeting at this gym. Anyways, so they really helped me. Hydropool really helped me get to world championships. They've supported me endlessly. And then when Max was coming, they were like, oh, moms are like our total target market. Let's put one in your backyard and we'll get a lot of video. We'll create a lot of content and you'll be like the triathlon mom who has a swim spa, and, other moms will want, it's marketing. But honestly, the relationship with them has been incredible. And having a swim spa in the backyard is amazing.
And so for people who don't know, tell them what a swim spa is.
Right. So you could call it an oversized hot tub because it has the seats, it has the jets, but the coolest feature is really that it has a counter current. So the water blows out so that I can swim in one place and train as a triathlete, or just like a regular person who enjoys swimming or wants to do some breaststroke. The kids love it because they attach like this little boogie board to it, and like the kids being my nieces, and they put it on speed 10 and they can surf. So it's like, ours is 14 feet, but you could get a 17-foot. It's an above ground pool kind of hot tub. You can adjust the temperature. So in the summer we kept it at like 85. And now we've got it at 98. Like we went in the other night. It's like, it's fun. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they look like fun. Every time I see one of your little videos, I'm like, that looks neat.
If you're ever in Burlington, stop by, come for a swim.
Oh, Burlington, you live out there? Poor people. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
no, I mean, I thought I would live in the city forever, right? I was at like Queens Quay and Spadina. I loved it, but you know how it happens.
Yeah, especially with little Max. So that's
Exactly.
the other thing that you've done since we spent way too much time together was becoming a mommy.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
I'm super happy for you to begin with, but
Thank you.
yeah, I've wanted to ask, like, what how did that, I don't know how this is going to come across, but knowing you, I'm just wondering like how much that changed the way you looked at everything. It must have been pretty dramatic because you're a very strong-willed lady, and to now have this other human to consider with everything. I'm just wondering how you've managed to redirect all that energy.
That's a really good point, about it no longer being about you. Um, but it has been like, I hate to sound cliche, right? Because I really didn't want to have kids. I was like, oh, but the environment in the world, and I don't want to contribute to the overpopulation. And I just want to be the cool auntie and travel. And, like I was really there. And then when I was pregnant and all my friends were like, yay, I was like, I don't get it. I'm uncomfortable. And then we ended up having a home birth, which was planned with midwives. So I got like super hippie into it. And that was fantastic. Like, what a cool experience to have a baby at home. Not everybody has it. I has that opportunity. Like, I feel very blessed to have been able to do that. And being 30, I'm 38 now, but being 37 at the time, I also have like this whole life that I've already got to enjoy and have. Not that my life's over, but like I've had a ton of really cool experiences. And so, yeah, there are moments when I'm like, oh my God, mama just needs some time. Like, this feels like too much and nothing, but like, I don't care. Nothing else matters anymore. That is the coolest kid. I like, of course, I think he's the coolest kid ever, but it doesn't, nothing else matters. It's pretty great.
That's that's a great response.
Okay.
Now it's like nothing else matters. That's it.
Doesn't.
I was there way too young, but like I think Joe Rogan put it the best way I've ever heard it put, is that it will change you, let it change you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Right.
like so much softer, so much more patient. I didn't know, like, I didn't have any patience. Last night when he wouldn't go to bed, I was like, "Ooh," and then I'm like, you're fine. I love you. It's fine.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So how has during the outbreak of the joy, obviously working in events and even working in the health field has taken a hit. How have you coped with that, I guess?
So I always say that like I had all of the highlights because I got to experience a year of being pregnant at home with my partner who he like had no work. Luckily, my boss at the beer festival kept me on staff. Like, he didn't lay anybody off. And well, there was only three of us. So he kept us, and like, thank goodness. But then I got to like hang out with Mike while I was pregnant for a year. We got to go up north a ton. And then I got to have a baby in like an isolation quarantine situation where like I didn't have a ton of people like coming, like my family was around, but there wasn't the expectation that I like brought him and like presented him to the world. We got to like hibernate and just be, I mean, of course it's been a devastating thing to millions of people, and I don't want to downplay that, but for us, the silver linings were plenty.
Well, yeah, everyone, had their own experience with it. I don't think, your disclaimer is necessarily needed to downplay it. Like, I think a lot of it came down to choice too, right? Like the way that we chose to deal with the time, the way that we chose to view what was happening in general, definitely had a major effect on, how we handled it. Logistics aside, I mean, I couldn't do the job that I was doing at the time when it happened. So therefore, had to rethink income. Obviously in Canada, there was help, but, if that wasn't there, you can only imagine, how bad that actually would have been, especially for all of us who were working in some type of a gig-based or, week to week paycheck type deal. Like you didn't have, a salary that you could rely on or anything like that. You really had to look at like, what's going to happen next. And that hasn't quite ended, because even like trying to go out and go back to work, it's like there's a lot fewer events if you're in that way. If talking to musicians on this podcast as well, there's a lot fewer gigs because bars aren't booking they're not as packed, so they're not booking as many gigs. And your husband Mike, it's exactly what he does. If the events aren't there, then what do you do, right? But I think it fell on our own shoulders to decide how we were going to deal with it. And that's where, a spotlight got shone on mental health and physical health and starting to look after themselves. So, hopefully a business like yours becomes more important, becomes like more of a focus moving forward because of all of this.
At Fitness for Mental Health.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it did. Anecdotally, one of the coolest things that it did was people started to buy into using Zoom. So before, one of our biggest challenges was geography. We'd have people who we'd trained, personal trainers who we train personal trainers in mental health. So, and then, say we had one in Guelph, but then a person needed help in Brampton. There's no way that you could get those people to work together before. Because people thought of, fitness support and personal training to be something that had to happen one-on-one. And when you try to be like, okay, well, let's do an online, you just couldn't even, people weren't getting there. Now everyone's like, cool. Yeah. Zoom. Awesome. 1 hour session. So we've just become a lot more accessible. And I agree with you when it comes to like, a lot of it is personal choice, but I also have to say, like, we have such privilege, right? When I say like, I had the privilege of being able to give birth at home or whatever, like, I'm a white person that lives in a middle-class neighborhood. Like I have a lot of privilege. So it was great, but
there's definitely that. And I think like even country to country, that's, privilege in that sense too, if you will. But it's obviously we're not done with it yet either.
I know it's never going away.
Yeah, our government is already today kind of threatening another lockdown over Christmas because our cases are doing the go through the roof thing again, which is a little ridiculous. I don't know if you know this, but I was working in a long-term care home through most of this, as well as like doing contract work through CAMH. So I was in and out of hospitals and their facilities as well during all of this. And I've remained sugar-free. I cannot take the lollipop. So I had to give up both of those jobs at the same time at the beginning of October for that reason. But it did, because of it being so close to what they call the front line, it did give me an interesting perspective on kind of, first of all, the joy and exactly the effect that the joy actually does have on people versus our response to it. And I think that overall, my feelings kind of lie on, I think that our response to it is still doing more harm than the actual joy itself. And a lot of that falls into what it's doing to people's mental health, right? Because logistics of like a lockdown and not being able to go out and live your regular life, as you might say, aside, you also have all this division in the world and all of these different things blowing up because of it, right? And then people are kind of locked at home with the news as well. So I hope that, I guess I should say, that the end result of this period in history will be that we do take mental health and put it right up there with physical health. And we do start trying to treat problems more at the root than purely symptom based. And I do think that approaching it the way that your business is, through mental health and fitness and coupling them, is a good way to get people into that, because it can replace that serotonin and dopamine spike that you were getting from something else, and it can make you feel better about yourself because you're actually getting fit and strong, and your endurance is getting better. You just feel better. So moving forward, what do you think is kind of the evolution of what you're doing with your business? I guess I don't know how to phrase the question I'm trying to ask, but I guess the best way to phrase it, how did all of this change the way that you're focusing on approaching fitness for mental health?
Yeah, I mean, well, thanks. I think like it came back to me realizing that if I go to school and I get this designation, that there's more that I can do with the organization in terms of being able to support people through their extended care benefits. When I started the organization, we made the mission statement that we were changing the way mental health is treated in Canada. And the vision included having OHIP, or provincial healthcare, cover physical activity within 20 years. That was like, this is a 20-year vision. And, learning. I realized that physiotherapy was invented during World War I, and it's still not covered by provincial healthcare. Like if you require physiotherapy, the only way that you can get it is if you have, like, without paying cash out of pocket, is if you have like extended benefits, which again is like not accessible to everybody. However, with a designation of a psychotherapist, I will be able to provide people receipts for their benefits, and then therefore I can access more people and support more people, because cash help, like people having to take cash out of their pocket for their own mental health is like, why is that not covered?
Yeah.
Everything for our physical health is covered. So I've had the opportunity to go to some, like the Psychology Association, Ontario Association of Psychologists. I went to one of their conferences a couple of years ago, and the main topic was, how do we change the fact that doctors treat people from here up or from here down? There's no doctors, I mean, other than like, people who are like taking out your brain tumor, but like that are doing both. And I think that if we do look at this as a turning point in history, will there be a correlation? Probably, between the fact that people are treated like in Eastern medicine, people, you're talking about like meditation and yoga, people that those were treated the same. Why did that separation happen? I think that there's probably like some theories, but will we start to shift? There's like a deep discussion around the influence of pharma and all that stuff, right? So
yeah.
Anyway.
Have you been practicing yoga and meditation long, or is that a newer thing in your life?
I started in 2004 because I lived in BC, right? So I wore my Lululemon, and then you did yoga. But like it actually helped me through some really hard times before I even knew why or how. And I've had some really great discussions over the past couple of years about how Western yoga has been appropriated. And because I took my yoga teacher training in 2018 it's a 1-year program. So, how we as yoga teachers need to do a better job of honoring and recognizing the roots of yoga and where it came from, instead of just being like, everyone do handstands on Instagram. Anyway, yeah.
Well, it's an aspect of our world that's improving, but
I hope.
Well, there's that, yeah. But where I was going with that was actually, the difference between men and women in positions of power. Like a position, maybe power is the wrong word, authority or influence, or like say in your case, like you've got an event and you're the manager and there's a bunch of men, you married one of them that work under you, right? So I think that obviously I do believe that this is getting better, but I do hear from a lot of young women that it's not much better, right? And it's still a major struggle. So I was wondering if maybe you could speak to that in like just in terms of your own experience, what helped you what you learned through it and what helped you get through it.
I think it's still there. And if I could go back and change the amount of conversations that I would have had differently, but I guess I don't want to like skirt any issues. I want to speak like directly to what I know now. And so, you know, what I understand now is that women in our society are marginalized, and there is a lot of sexual harassment that takes place that is seen as, just whatever, look the other way. There is like body discrimination that happens. Women in larger bodies are not getting jobs or not being given the same opportunities. So I don't know what the question is, Shane. You need to ask me again, because this topic gets me so enraged.
Well, we'll go with the rage then. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted. I want you to rant.
Well, I mean, so on Women's Day, like Mike called me and was like, I'm going to take you out for a date night to celebrate Women's Day. And he like got a babysitter for the first time. So it was our first night out since I had given birth. So Max was like 4 months old, and it was like our first date night. And like, I say the poor guy, but like he can take it and he needs to take it. We spent the whole entire night, like me, like banging my fist on the table, talking about how in his line of work, it's mostly white men and stagehands, and how, you know, there was a discussion around whether or not a woman was capable of doing a certain job. And, oh, well, she hasn't cut her teeth. And I'm like, you know, we literally debated for the entire night about, was she given the same opportunities? How was she treated? What were the roadblocks in her way as she got to this, you know, like there's just all of these things. And that contribute. And I'm just not going to be quiet about it anymore. When I see it, I'm going to call it out. And I love my boss right now. He listens when, you know, like I remember when I first started at the beer festival, like every time I talked, I was like in my head, because of my experiences at the previous job, I was like, do these guys think I'm an asshole? Should I speak less? Should I talk less? Like I was, you know, and they were like actually listening to me and actually like receiving what I was saying, and they weren't judging me or, you know, and over the years, it's just evolved in such a way that I feel like we are equals, you know, it's a really nice vibe. I will no longer work for men who don't treat me as an equal or value my opinions. And yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know the solution either. It's something that I really got a close look at running events. Like it was very apparent that like men were treating women in the position, especially if their position, because for whatever reason in events, a lot of women do make it higher up in that particular, probably because they have the organizational skills that a lot of men don't have, but they do make it in. And I remember like you would hear comments from men being like, whatever, like I have to listen to her, she's a broad, or like, you know, something to that effect. And I was like, when is this going to die out of human society?
Yeah,
Like,
well, that's what Mike says. He's like, the generations just have to die. And I'm like, actually, no, because those generations, it's trickling down. We need people to start taking active change. And like, now imagine I have a son together with this person who I'm having these conversations about toxic masculinity and what it looks like to be a toxic role model. And like, he has no idea sometimes, but the best thing is like, he's willing to learn, he's willing to have the conversations. And like, I still do it too. And I don't even realize. And so it's a lot of it is about like calling out the behaviors, recognizing when they happen, working to try to understand them and be better. And yeah, like I'm raising a white man.
It's a good way to put it. But yeah, a part of why like I like doing conversations like this and whatnot is like I think that, you know, the skill of working through things, like having conversations with people and working through thoughts and ideas is something we're lacking. And the more practice we get at it, the better we get. And like having those conversations that, you know, 10 years ago were you weren't supposed to have them. Like that would be, we don't talk about religions, we don't talk about politics, like that was almost like a boundary people would set at like dinner tables and shit. And I think that's the opposite of what we need to do. I think we need to be scrapping this out. And I mean, like I remember my working relationship with you, we had many scraps, right? Like, and it was something that like neither one of us like emotionally hated each other because of it. Even if we were, in disagreement, we could both walk away from it because I think we both approach those type of subjects that same way, where it's like, I want to hear why you think what I'm doing is wrong, because yes, I might change what I'm doing, but if I hear what you think I'm doing and I still don't think I need to, I'm probably not. And that should be okay for you because it's okay for me too.
Yeah. And one of those topics is pay, right? Like we were taught not to talk about our pay, but that is so that we continue to keep the top making the most and the bottom making the least, and women making less than men. And like, so that's just another one of those topics that we need to talk about with our coworkers and our colleagues. And but healthy conflict is seen as something by a lot of people as like, oh, conflict, like it's a negative. Whereas like, healthy conflict is seen as an oxymoron, but that's not true. You can have healthy conflict and work through things, and like, but that's like the cause of all the wars. I don't know.
Right. And it's even harder for women because the time, like when you guys stand up for yourself and actually voice an opinion, men like to call you bitches, right?
Totally.
That's a problem.
Yeah. And even being a mom now too, and seeing how there's this like mom penalty that just becomes like, I love it. And it's the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me, but I'm earning less because I can't work as much because I'm a caregiver, and being a caregiver is unpaid work in our society. And yet we need women to give birth and raise the next leaders. And that's just another way that we continue to marginalize women. So anyway.
Very true. I did the stay-at-home dad thing for a year, and like, I will never ever be able to tell a woman that like being a housewife or being a stay-at-home mom is not a job. Like that's, I would rather, like, to be honest, I literally after a year of it was like, okay, someone bail me out here. Like, let me go back to work because this is, it's the job that doesn't end. You wake up to it, you go to sleep to it, you're like dreaming of it. It's really quite a thing. And like, for so many hundreds of years now, women have been put on this like second tier because all they do is raise children and all they do is like housework and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, dude, go try doing it for like, you're going to be screaming to go back to building that house. Guarantee it, like just using two arbitrary examples.
Yeah. But when it's so funny, because when you say all they do is like, who raised all the white men who are making all the decisions? Women. You know what I mean? It's like, well, and men, but I'm just saying, like, it's so ironic that the position is seen as less than.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, I it's my hope that this is getting better. I really truly do think that we're at this place right now where like social justice is so out of hand that they're biting off their own face, it's but there's still a lot of positive things that are coming out through it. We have made massive headway in terms of like gay marriage and things like that. We've like even legalizing weed and different like bringing psilocybin into the mental health field. Like there's a lot of different things that are kind of creeping up out of it all that are positive. It's just so unfortunate, and I guess it's just part of growing pains. I mean, growing pains never felt good. That's why they call them pains, right? Yeah. And I think society's kind of enduring the growing pains, and we're seeing it as this division. And if we shy away from the conversation and we don't have the courage of our convictions to actually stand up in our own power and say, like, I've looked at this situation, this is the way I see it. If you think that I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it. Right. And detach the ego from it a little bit. I think that would make for a much healthier society.
That's true. I agree. Yeah.
Well, lady, I'll let you get on with your day, but it's been nice to catch up with you and get you to explain to me what a hydropool actually is.
Hydropool is the brand, the swim spa is the product.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No,
But they're pretty
a
neat.
pet peeve of my boss. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been great. I mean, just to see you and have the opportunity to catch up and to chat and relive some of the old memories. I really appreciate it. And nice, even though we're not in regular touch, I still consider us good friends.
Likewise.
Thank
Well,
you.
welcome to the library, and I look forward to watching that adorable son of yours continue to be adorable. What is it, Mondays? It's Mondays.
I mean, I gave that up after the first 6 months because like he's a toddler now. So it's like people are going to be like, okay, but yeah, he's still pretty darn cute.
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
you.
All right, lady. Lots of love to you, and have a
You too.
wonderful day. Bye,
Thank you.
people at home.
Bye.